Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dan Frummel from the Tennessee Department of Education, and I am joined today by my colleague Jackie Jacobson to give a foster care refresher course. I appreciate everyone logging on. As a reminder, if you can mute yourself when you come online, it'll help for the listening experience for everybody. We have to do it manually on our end, and so sometimes it's hard to hunt through the list and find who's talking. Our goal today, as we go through the meeting here, we did a big meeting, a large webinar. Your focus, please. Our goal today is really to provide a refresher on foster care, and so not dig as much into every little procedure and all of the research behind this. Our goal today is to focus on areas where we've seen a lot of questions come up throughout the year. And so the different areas that we talk through today are going to be the definition of foster care. We can talk about the progress that we've been making as a state, the responsibilities of the foster care point of contact, and then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the best interest determination meetings. This tends to be the area that we have the most questions. We're going to also work through some scenarios to determine when a best interest determination meeting is needed. And then I've also listed the FAQs that we published and sent out at the beginning of the semester. You'll see those in here. I won't bore you by going through each one individually. But we will have them up there for reference if they're needed or if further clarification on any of them is needed. We're also recording this webinar as well, and so we'll make that available to everybody afterwards, along with a copy of the PowerPoint. And so, yeah, our objectives are identifying students in foster care, determining when best interest determination meeting is needed, understanding our responsibilities at the district level, and then identifying appropriate points of contact. We're going to start with the requirements. So again, in 2015, with the passing of ESSA, it required the districts to provide assurances that children in foster care enroll or remain in their school of origin unless there is a determination that it is not in their best interest. So for example, we have a student that is attending an elementary school in our school system, and they are placed with a foster family and are now zoned for another elementary school. Whenever it is in their best interest, we want to keep them in that school of origin because research shows us that it helps the student tremendously. It increases their chances of graduation and just provides that overall stability in their life where it might be lacking in other areas. The other piece that I always share at the beginning of the presentation is what is a student in foster care? And this may seem straightforward, but this has actually come up several times in TA requests, technical assistance requests this year. And so when we talk about foster care, we're talking about away from their families by the Department of Children's Services, and that the Department of Children's Services has placement and care responsibilities. And so, for example, we've had a couple cases come up this year where there might have been an allegation in a home. The student has DCS involved in their case, but they're not in DCS custody, and maybe an aunt or an uncle or grandma has custody of the child for a short period of time while a case is being investigated, but they're not actually placed there through DCS. In those cases, unfortunately, that student is not protected under ESSA and is not considered to be a student in foster care. So again, that placement has to occur through DCS. DCS has to have placement and care responsibilities for the student. Okay, so again, we had this webinar in September. We sent out an FAQ, and this is a new law for all of us. This is a new program for all of us, and so it's important to see how we're doing as a state. And so as you guys know, every quarter you get a form stack survey from me, and then probably a bunch of annoying emails that I follow up with bugging you guys to fill out the survey, promising you that it'll only take 5 minutes. And you guys have done a really good job filling that out, and I really appreciate it. because it allows us to know what are some of the problem areas that we're facing, where do we need more technical assistance. And so I've got a couple graphs here to show you guys. The first one here shows how many districts are participating in best interest determination meetings. And so if you look back almost a year ago when we started collecting this data, only 18 districts reported being involved in a bid meeting. We saw that go up to 24 districts by the end of the school year. By October of this year, we already had 37 districts participating in bid meetings. And then by the December survey or the January survey, it was all the way up to 57 districts participating in bid meetings. So again, thank you all. It makes me feel like our emails and our documents are being read, and I just appreciate everybody's work on this because it really leads to good outcomes for children. Breaking that down to the number of bid meetings, again, you see that similar trend all the way from 86 a year ago, 132 at the end of last year, and now halfway through the year, we were already up to 279 best interest determination meetings. So just a tremendous amount of progress. And again, that is just a huge thanks to you guys and to the educational specialists or education coordinators on DCS's side out in the field, that communication that you guys are having to get these meetings in place. Again, it's making a difference. And then my favorite slide is how many kids were able to remain in their school of origin. Again, we know that kids do better academically when they're able to remain in their school of origin. Last year, we only had 99 reports of students remaining in their school of origin. And this year, again in December, we were already up to 151. So if you haven't done so already, please give yourself a pat on the back. I can't express enough how grateful I am for the hard work that you guys are doing and the good communication in this. That being said, there have been a lot of questions along the way, and I'm sure a lot of outstanding questions still. And so we're going to spend the rest of this going through some areas that we've seen some problem areas pop up or where further clarification is needed. The responsibilities of the foster care point of contact. Again, it's maintaining that agreement between districts and the Department of Children's Services. Our CFAs are coming due here shortly. If you have a current agreement with DCS and that agreement is already signed, you do not need to enter into a new one unless your contract stipulates otherwise. So if you have one that's expiring, then of course you would have to do a new one. But for the most part, what I think we're getting a little feedback there. If you can check your mute button there. Again, you don't have to upload a new agreement if you have a current one. The other role is identifying students in foster care. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. In conjunction with DCS, arrange transportation, remove barriers to enrollment, and train all applicable staff on foster care provisions. So let's talk about identifying students in foster care. This is an area where, after talking with districts, I think that it lended itself to further clarification, because there are really two ways that we identify students in foster care. And historically, we've really focused on the school nutrition list. This really has to happen in two ways. We've got to be using the school nutrition list, but we've also got to have really good communication with the DCS, educational specialists, and case workers in the field. So the first one is when we're identifying students off of the school nutrition list. So the DCS provides a list to the Tennessee Education School Nutrition Division, and school nutrition sends this list on a monthly basis to all of the districts that then sort and match up the students to identify the students that are in foster care. This list should be the ultimate list that you're using when you're coding students in your student management system with the FOSO1 identification, because this is kind of the ultimate word from DCS of students that are in custody. But the problem with this list is it only comes out once a month, right? So if you had a student that went into foster care at the beginning of the month, you're not going to wait until the list comes out to identify a student in foster care and then start serving them. You're going to want to serve them sooner than that. which leads us to our second area, which is through the DCS educational specialists or educational coordinators. They will be contacting the foster care point of contact whenever a bid meeting is needed, and that will be the more immediate process so that we can ensure that we have a bid meeting within 5 days and transportation set up 5 days after that. And so, again, we have the two methods. The ed specialist is notifying us immediately so we can get the services in place, but then we've got that list that's coming once a month, ensure that we have all students coded properly in the student management system. All right, let's talk about best interest determination meetings. Obviously a hot topic. This is an area where we get the most of our questions, kind of who's responsible for what, how this process should occur. So DCS and the school district must have a bid meeting to determine the student's placement. When a student is in foster care and it is feasible that he or she could attend the school of origin. And so the way that with DCS we have defined this is that anytime a student is within a 60-minute drive of the school of origin. And again, please note that it says drive, because 60 miles may mean one thing in Roane County as it does in Shelby County, right? So we're really looking at that 60-minute time period to have a student on transportation. And again, the school system and DCS have to be involved in this meeting. So reiterating that it is a joint, shared process between the two. It shouldn't be a individual decision. So I think it's also important to identify when is a bid meeting not needed, because there are some specific circumstances on when you do not need a bid meeting. So the opposite, obviously, of the 60 minutes. If a student is outside of a 60-minute ride from the school of origin, a bid meeting is not needed. We understand that that's just too far to be transporting a student a day, and so we don't have to have a meeting to discuss that. We can just enroll the student in the new school. For example, if we had a student, again, I'll pick on Roane County, that came from Roane County and is placed in a foster family in Davidson County, we know that we're not going to transport a student halfway across the state each day for school. So a bid meeting is not needed. We can just go ahead and immediately enroll in the new school. The second area is if the Department of Children's Services believes that a student is not safe in the school of origin or has significant treatment concerns around the safety piece. And we'll get into some examples later, but one being, if there's an accusation against a perpetrator that is attending that school, we obviously wouldn't want them to remain in that school. We're going to want them in a different environment for their safety. And so in cases like that, DCS has the authority to say, even though the student's only moving 10 miles down the road, we're going to go ahead and enroll them in the new school. There's a significant safety concern, and due to confidentiality reasons, they might not always be able to share that safety concern. And then 3 and 4 really go together. When a student is placed in or coming back from a residential placement with an in-house DCS-approved school, we would not need a bid meeting. The logic behind this is that going into a facility that has an in-house school, it's pretty much going to be predetermined that student needs that level of treatment, that they're not necessarily safe out in the community. They need that in-house school. So we're not going to consider a best interest termination meeting when they're going into it. And when they're coming back out from a residential treatment, well, most of the facilities, you're not going to be able to attend their school unless you're actually residing in there. So those are the 4 areas that I really hope that helps provide some guidance. That was in the FAQ as well, as to when a student is going to need a bid meeting or not need a bid meeting. So then the process for this is that the DCS regional educational specialist is responsible for contacting the school system, foster care point of contact, when a bid meeting is needed. And then all bid meetings must include the DCS ed specialist and the foster care point of contact for the school system. And then really important here is that the meetings can occur in person, and I definitely recommend that if it's a complicated situation, but they can also occur via teleconference, or in some cases an email exchange might be appropriate to capture everything that needs to be captured in that. We're going to go over a couple scenarios here and talk through that further. Here's a list of considerations that we want to look at when determining what's in the best interest for the student, the appropriateness of the current education, the length of the commute, IDA and EL services, preference of the student or the education decision maker, placement of siblings, history of school transfers and how they impacted the student. When we have a bid meeting, the district is responsible for documenting all bid meetings on the bid form provided by the department, and you'll see that here on the next slide. And a copy of those results of the bid meeting should be kept on file by the school district foster care point of contact, and then a copy should also be sent to the DCS education specialist so that they can keep that on file as well. This is something that we will look for during on-site monitoring for foster care. We would ask to see those bid forms. And then this is what the best interest determination form looks like as well. Again, we'll send this out after the meeting when we send up the PowerPoint slides as well.
Seaside.
Yep.
John called about.
See if I can mute them real quick. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I was muting some noise on there. Okay, so the districts must coordinate with DCS to develop a dispute resolution process. To the extent feasible and appropriate, a child must remain in his or her school of origin while awaiting a decision, and transportation must be provided in order to reduce the number of school moves. Ultimately, if an agreement is not possible, the non-regulatory guidance from USED says that DCS has the authority to make that final decision. Okay. All right, let's do a quick activity. We'll kind of check for understanding, see who's paying attention and who's playing Candy Crush on their phone. Let's see. So I've got a couple of scenarios here, and I want you to read the scenario, listen to the scenario, and then just tell me what you think. Would you have a best interest determination meeting in this case or not? And when you come up with an answer, if you'd be so brave to do so, just type yes or no in the chat box, and we'll go from there. So scenario number one, Gabriel is a 5th grade student at Harkin Elementary in Boyd County. He's living in a foster care placement, but due to behaviors in the placement is disrupted, he's moved to another foster family in Boyd County. The family is only 10 miles from Harkin Elementary, but they are zoned for another school. The foster family tells the school principal that they will drive the student to Harkin Elementary each day. So is a bid meeting still needed? Yes or no? I'll give you a minute to type in your responses. I see some brave souls answering, a bunch of yeses coming in. And you are correct on that one. The answer to this one is yes, we would have a bid meeting. Even though the foster family is willing to provide transportation, that's great. This might be a really straightforward conference call that we have with ed specialists and DCS, make sure that everybody's on board. The parents are not required to provide transportation under this law, so that's another reason why that bid meeting is so important. We want to make sure that the parent doesn't believe that they have to provide that transportation. If they're willing to do so, that's definitely a viable option, but we want to make sure that it's clearly understood that that's not a requirement of them, and that everybody involved in this child's education agrees that this is the best placement for the student. All right, you guys did a great job with that one. We'll try look at that, even a response there. Scenario number two. Andy lives in Ocean County with his mom and attends Hawk Middle School. He's placed in DCS custody and sent to a residential treatment center with an in-house school. The treatment center is only 2 miles from Hawk Middle School. Is a bid meeting needed? You guys are getting faster. I like it. All right, you guys are correct. The answer is no. He's going into a residential facility with an in-house school, so no best interest determination meeting is needed. All right, Number 3, I'll see if I can stump you guys this time. Oliver is a kindergarten student with ADHD attending Bear Elementary. He has been suspended from riding the bus twice this year already for inappropriate behavior. He's placed in foster care that is zoned for another school district, and it's a 59-minute bus ride from Bear Elementary. Is a bid needed? And that was my trick question. I was hoping I was going to get you guys, but you figured it out. Yeah, a bid meeting is still needed. He's still within that 60-minute radius, and we want to have a conversation. But looking at the facts, it's pretty obvious that we're probably not going to keep him in his school of origin if he has that significant of issues on the bus. So this might be one that is appropriate for a teleconference or maybe even an email, since we have so much data to back this up that a bus ride is just not really going to be beneficial to this student. So this could hopefully be one of the kind of quicker meetings that we come to agreement on. All right, 2 more for you. Marcy is a freshman at Eagle High School in Sussex County. She is placed with a foster family that is 40 minutes away from Eagle High School, but it is in a different county. Neither school district is willing to cross county lines with their buses. Is a bid meeting needed? You guys are good. You guys are good. Yes, it is still needed. Even though the student is attending a new school district, still has the right to educational stability. In this scenario, both of the school districts and DCS share the responsibility of providing transportation for this student, if it is determined that attending the school of origin is in her best interest.
Grand Sleeve. Okay. All right, here we go. We
got water. That's scenario, and I hear somebody talking. I'm going to try to mute him real quick.
Suitcases in. Let's check out the bathroom. The bathroom is absolutely beautiful. There's a couple.
And yeah. All right.
Sink.
Okay, I think I got it. This is just kind of like fishing, and some people unmute and then they come back unmuted. I'm not sure what that's about. Let's look at scenario number 5. Ace is a 6th grader at Lyon Middle School. He is placed in foster care only 10 minutes from Lyon Middle School, but is now zoned for Tiger Middle School. DCS has determined that it's unsafe for him to return to Lyon Middle School at this time, as there is an open case between him and his previous foster parents. The previous foster parents live adjacent to Lyon Middle School. Is a bid meeting needed? Well, guys, I'm disappointed. I was hoping I could stump you guys on one of these, but you guys have been on the mark with all of them. No, a bid meeting is not needed for this case. It is clear that there is a safety concern, a significant treatment concern, and so therefore DCS makes that call. No bid meeting is needed. All right. I'm going to kind of skip through the frequently asked questions here. I think some of them we might come back to in the discussion here. And a lot of these we've talked about already. So we've talked about the bid meetings and when they're required. I want to see if there are any here that I want to highlight for you. The trial home visit, that was a question that had come up last time to highlight. Whether a student is on a trial home visit, they're still considered to be in foster care, still considered to be in custody of DCS, so they would be eligible for a bid meeting. Feeding pattern was a good question that we had gotten, and this is one that we had to look and say, you know, under the foster care piece, there isn't any definitive guidance under it, but a lot of the foster care language is based off of the McKinney-Vento guidance, and under McKinney-Vento, they do have that right, so we give a strong recommendation on that one to continuing the student in their feeder pattern and having a bid meeting to discuss that if that's in the student's best interest. Okay, I'm going to skip through these and we can come back to some of these if they come up in our questions. The last piece of information that I wanted to share here is, again, we sent this out and we can send this out. I'm going to ask Jackie to make a note of that. We'll send this out, the form out, and the PowerPoint out. This is the list of educational specialists for DCS by region. I think most of you successfully made contact with them, and if not, then you'll have their information here. Again, additional resources. And then this is our team here at TDLE, and we're always available to help walk you guys through anything. So I hit my goal. I know this was a really quick webinar. I wanted to make it kind of short and sweet and to the point. This is really just a midway refresher through the year. And then I want to spend, for any of you that would like to continue on with us, I'm going to just take a moment to review the questions in the chat box. If you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat box, and then I will respond to those in just a moment after I read them. And so the question is, what documentation should be provided when DCS feels that the determination is not feasible? And so I think this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this would be like one of those safety concerns. You know, that's a good question. It's something that I'll ask DCS what they're comfortable sharing with the school district, because obviously with the safety concerns, we don't want to breach the confidentiality. My initial thought would be just a simple email to the district saying that we're not going to have a bid meeting for this student due to concerns. But I will clarify that in our next meeting with DCS and give a more definitive answer on that.
Dan, this is Mary. That's correct, because we have various reasons why we can't share all the information, whether it's the student's confidentiality or because of possible investigations. So that's where that communication between the POCs is vital.
So it would just be an email from that specialist to the POC just saying, hey, no bid meeting needed.
I do know some of them are sending a form back to the POCs where they've marked bid meeting not required, or
okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. That's very helpful. And that's Mary Lyle. Thank you for speaking up there. Mary is the foster care point of contact for the Department of Children's Services. I don't see any other questions coming through. If you have any, feel free to type in the box. But in the absence of any questions, again, our team is here to support you guys. If you have any questions you'd rather ask one-on-one, feel free to give us an email or give us a call, and be happy to help you out. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you joining us, and as always, working through our sound issues here from time to time. I think we might have one other question here. So I do have one last question there. Sorry about that. Missed that question there. Question is, should the ed specialist be contacting the district point of contact every time a foster care student is enrolled? That's a great question. So every time a student is enrolled, you won't hear from the educational specialist. What we ask is that the ed specialist is notifying the point of contact only when a student is in need of that bid meeting. So you may have a lot of students that are enrolling that might not be changing schools or meet one of the other criteria that we mentioned, and in those cases, there wouldn't necessarily be notification from the ed specialist on that. The foster family or the caseworker would be the ones enrolling the students. That would be an indicator that they're in DCS custody. And then again, the school nutritionist would provide that check and balance there as well.
And
Good
also
question.
the presence of the education passport, because that's your indicator that that child is in foster care when they receive the education passport.
Excellent. Thank you. And we have a district reaching out about communication. And so if you haven't heard from your educational point of contact, a couple of reasons. It might be that there aren't students in foster care or that lack of foster placements in the program. What we recommend is reach out to the educational specialist from DCS to just make sure that that line of communication is open. And then if you if you have trouble getting a hold of anybody, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help make those connections as well, just to make sure, you know, is it a communication issue, or are there just no students that are eligible in that area? All right, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, we're available via email. Feel free to reach out to us. Again, if you are having communication issues, I think those would be great ones for us to dive into and kind of see where the breakdowns might be. All right. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.
Thank you.